What's up, y'all? It's Nefertiti, also known as the Corny Rainbow, and today I am back for another McCall's sew along for you guys. McCall's has just released their fall patterns, and there are a few of them that I'm really interested in, but let's get into this menswear pattern, McCall's 8441. This pattern features 2 jacket views and 1 pant view. So for this sew along, we're going to be doing view B, which is our hooded version. And I'm so in love with this one. I know I say that about every pattern that I make, but the contrast and the piping on this set are perfect. I'm going to show you how you can make your own piping, or you can purchase stretch piping if you're able to find it. We're also going to use 2 contrasting fabrics. The suggested fabrics for this pattern are knits only, at least 35% stretch. Do make sure to check the stretch gauge at the bottom of the pattern. For view A and B, you're going to need 5 3/8 yard of 3/4 of an inch stretch piping. You're going to need 3 strips of 6 by 40 inch rib trim. For view A, you're going to need a 28-inch separating zipper. For view B, you're going to need a 26-inch separating zipper. All right, y'all, let's get started. For view B and A, you're going to need pattern piece number 1. You're going to cut 2. Pattern piece number 2, which is our pocket, we're going to cut 2 of fabric. Pattern piece number 3, which is our back, we're going to cut 1 on the fold. Pattern piece number 4, which is our sleeve front, we're going to cut 2 of fabric. Pattern piece number 5 is our sleeve inset center. We're going to cut 2 of fabric if we're doing view A, and if you're doing view B with me, you're going to cut 2 of your contrasting fabric. Pattern piece number 6, your sleeve back for view A and B. Pattern piece number 9, our sleeve band, we're going to cut 2 of our rib knit or trim. Pattern piece number 8, which is our front facing, we're going to cut 2 of fabric and 2 of interfacing. Pattern piece number 10, which is our lower front band, we're going to cut 2 of fabric. Pattern piece number 11, which is our lower front and back band, we're going to cut 1 of fabric on the fold. Pattern piece number 12, which is our hood, if you're doing view B, you're going to cut 4 of fabric. Be sure to transfer all your markings and your notches. Let's go ahead and get started. Go ahead and grab your pocket, and I'm going to go ahead and finish off the raw edges with my serger. So I'm going to serge on this edge here of the pocket, and we'll be folding that towards the inside. You should have a fold line on the inside as well. And I'm also going to serge the raw edge on the bottom, and then also on the top once we've folded everything down. So you can serge, or you can fold under 1/4 of an inch seam allowance and do a top stitch on this if you like. So go ahead and do that and meet me back here. I went ahead and serged down the top edge and the bottom edge, and also our side seam edge. And I left this seam unserged because this is where our zipper is going to go. Turn it to the inside, and we're going to go ahead and do a basting stitch right along the edge here, and you can fill the edge here. You can go ahead and top stitch, and you can skip the basting step. Go ahead and do that, and give all of your seams that have been serged a good press. We're going to be turning up 5/8 of an inch for our seam allowance, making sure that you bring your corners inward so that we can have a nice clean fold. Give everything a good press, and then meet me back here. All right, so I got a little serger happy, and I serged the edge that I told you guys not to serge, but it's all good. Just might create a little bit more bulk at the zipper, so just be mindful of that. Now we're going to grab our front piece which is pattern piece number 1, and we're going to place our pocket. You should have transferred your markings for your pocket placement. Once you've matched up your markings and your placement line on your pocket, go ahead and pin everything down. Be sure to leave the pocket opening. We're not gonna pin there. We're only stitching the top bottom edge and then the side seam of our pocket, and we're gonna base stitch where our zipper is going to go. All right, let's go ahead and head over to the machine. All right, so I'm starting off with the basting stitch at the zipper side opening on the front. Now I'm going to edge stitch the pocket in place. All right, so you should have edge stitched your pockets down for both sides. So grab your other front piece. All right, once you have grabbed both of your front pieces, go ahead and grab your back piece. And we're going to pin at the side seams only. Go ahead and stitch your front to back at your side seams. You can either double stitch or you can stitch and finish your edges off with your serger. So do that, come back, and we're gonna move on to our piping. All right, so I went ahead and stitched and serged everything, and then I pressed my seam allowances towards the back pattern piece. So now we are going to attach our piping to the armhole of the front and back pieces. So go ahead and grab your piping. You could use elastic piping already pre-made, or you can make your own. I made my own, and I used round cord elastic and just a contrasting knit fabric so that everything is, because the pattern is a full knit pattern. And I will also show you guys how you can make your own if you are unable to find knit piping. I've gone ahead and I've put my elastic on and folded it over the inside of my bias tape that I've made myself with my knit fabric. And I'm just going to stitch this elastic in place so that it doesn't move once we start. So with wrong sides together and my zipper foot in place, I'm gonna go ahead and keep my elastic cord on the inside. I'm not gonna get right up on it just yet, because once I stitch this down on our garment, I'll get a little bit closer. So you don't have to get right up on the cording when you're making your piping. I'm going to use a longer stitch because we're going to go over this again once we put it on the garment. So let's go ahead and pin this down. I'm going to go ahead and stitch as close to the piping stitches as possible. If you have a piping foot, now would be a good time to use that. If you don't have a piping foot, you can use a zipper foot, and you can get very close to the piping edge as possible, but it should also be your 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So let's go ahead and head over to the machine. All right, I'm using a zipper foot, and I did use a different color thread on the piping so that you can see the stitches. Once you have attached your piping, go ahead and put this to the side, and we're going to start on our sleeves. All right, so go ahead and grab your front and back sleeves, and we're going to pin piping down the inside of the sleeve on both pattern pieces. All right, so I went ahead and I pinned down my piping on my front and back sleeve. So go ahead and stitch these the piping onto your front and back sleeves in the same manner that you did the armhole. Come back and we're going to attach the sleeve inset. All right, once you have stitched your piping onto both front and back sleeves, we're going to match our sleeve inset, and you should have notches. So go ahead and match the notches up with right sides together. You should have a single notch on your front sleeve piece. Go ahead and pin that with right sides together. We're going to head over to the machine and we're going to stitch this together. So the stitching that we have already made to attach the piping, we should see it. And that's the side that I'm going to be stitching on for an easy guide. And I have my zipper foot on. We're going to go ahead and stitch. So we're going right over our existing stitches. So go ahead and press your seams toward your inset. And now we're going to match our inseams. You should have notches here as well. And we're going to stitch at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Just as a reminder, all of your seams should be stitched in a double stitch or a single stitch and a serger stitch, whatever your preference is, but you want to make sure that these straight stitches are very secure. So go ahead and head over to the machine, stitch the inseam at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and we are going to add our sleeve band. All right, so you're going to grab your sleeve band, and I have a method that I like to use to reduce bulk in the bands. So with right sides together, you're going to pin your band the same way you would. You're going to match your notches up, your side notch here. Instead of stitching on this edge here and then folding everything down, go ahead and fold it again in half, matching up all layers. Go ahead and stitch at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. This is how your sleeve band should look. Now we're going to turn it to the inside. Wow. And it's like magic. Your notches should still line up together and you have less bulk on that inseam. And that's always the goal, because it's really hard once you put these bands onto your sleeve with all of that thickness. Keep that tip in mind and use it for future if you like. Now we're going to go ahead and pin the band matching our seam to our inseam, and you should have a notch on your sleeve inset. We're going to match that up as well. So with right sides together, go ahead and pin your sleeve band. All right, so we're gonna stitch at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I like to do a zigzag stitch here prior to going over it again with the serger. Whatever method works for you, I would stick with that. I'm going to do a zigzag stitch. And once I get to the piping, I'm going to wind the machine by hand just to prevent any breaking of the needle. And stretch your fabric as needed. All right, so I've gone ahead and attached one of my sleeves. So I just have the one left, and you should have one notch on the front sleeve and 2 notches on the back sleeve. So go ahead and match up your inseam of your sleeve with your side seam of your jacket. Then go ahead and match up your notches. So with your zipper or piping foot, we're going to go ahead and stitch 5/8 of an inch seam allowance around our existing stitches that we made while we were attaching our piping. So go ahead and do that. Finish off your armhole with a serger or a zigzag stitch like I have here on my other sleeve. Give everything a good press. If you are sewing view A, then you will have a collar. On view B, we actually have a hood. So we're gonna go ahead and attach the lower front and back band and the lower front band. So go ahead and grab those 2 pieces, and I have gone ahead and attached one of my lower bands, matched up my notches, and pressed everything. We're going to do the same on this side. So you should have markings on your lower band, and you should also have a notch on your lower front and back band. Go ahead and pin. Go ahead and stitch at 5/8 of an inch, and then give everything a good press like I've already done here. All right, so go ahead and grab your jacket, and as you can see, I have a few markings here on the lower front and back band, and we also have notches throughout our band. So we're gonna, with right sides together, we're gonna match everything up with our jacket. So I'm gonna start with my back notches. And then my marking is where I'm meeting my seam allowance. And you may need to stretch your band just a little bit to fit. All right, go ahead and stitch your lower band to your jacket at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now that we have stitched our lower front and back bands to our jacket, we're going to put this to the side for a second, and we're going to work on our hood. So for my hood, I have I decided to do a different color for the inside just to give the jacket a little bit of spice. You don't have to do that. You can use same color fabric as the outside of your hood. So what we're going to do is, with right sides together, 2 of your hood pieces, we're going to stitch together at the center back. You should have 3 notches here. So go ahead and pin or clip. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and pin the outer hood as well. Head on over to the machine and stitch both of your hoods at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and give everything a good press, opening your seams upward. If you need to, use your tailor hand for the curved edges. All right, so I have my hood and then my hood facing. And so this is the right side of my hood, the right side of my hood facing. I'm just gonna slide the hood into the hood facing, right sides together. And then I'm going to pin along the outer edge. Make sure that your seams are pressed open, your center seams, and that they're matched up. Go ahead and stitch at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then we're going to understitch. Turn your hood right side out and then press your seam allowance toward your facing, and we're going to understitch. So go ahead and trim down your seam allowance and give everything a good press. All right, so go ahead and attach the hood to the jacket with right sides together. We are going to match notches first. So you should have a notch on the edge of the hood and also on your jacket. Go ahead and match those up first. All right, so go ahead and baste your hood to your jacket. I noticed something that was missing in the instructions with the hood, and I want to point it out. Just keep in mind that you do have markings on the hood. I went ahead, had already attached my zipper and everything in my facing, and I noticed that my hood facing was sewn down, basted down to my jacket already. So there are markings here, and what's missing in the instructions is that you need to leave the facing. Do not sew down your facing to your jacket. So in the instructions, it's telling you to baste your entire hood before you attach it to the jacket. But when you're making your hood, you're only going to baste from the edge to the dots, to the markings. And then when you attach your hood, you're still going to have that opening, because we need to close this off so that those seams that seam allowance is not showing. All right, so I've attached the hood, and now the next thing that we're going to do is attach our zipper. What I've gone ahead and done is I've made markings right at where I need my seams to match up on the zipper. With right sides together, I'm going to go ahead and pin, matching up all of those markings with my zipper. All right, so go ahead and baste down your zipper. Take off your other side. You should have your markings on your zipper to help guide you on where you need to place it on the other side. All right, so this is what I like to see. Your zipper is attached. We've basted everything down. Your seams are matching up. And now we're gonna go ahead and add on our front facing. All right, so we're almost at the finish line with this one here, and we've attached our zipper. So go ahead and grab your front facing, and you should have gone ahead and serged or finished off your inside raw edge. Also stay stitched around the neck edge. So you have this notch here on the bottom of your lower band, and that is where we are going to match our notch with our front facing. You should also have a marking. That marking is just indicating where our seam allowance is, and we're going to match that up as well. All right, so go ahead and stitch your front facing to the bottom of your lower band at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, making sure that you do not stitch past this marking. Now we're going to create our fold, and we're going to bring this seam allowance up, and where you have your marking for where your zipper ends, we're going to pin right sides together but to the wrong side of our zipper, and we're going to go ahead and stitch. So I'm going to be following the same basting stitch that we created for our attaching our zipper. So go ahead and pin. All right, so we also have a notch on the neck edge of our facing. So we're gonna fold our hood downward, and I'm gonna go ahead and just trim down my zipper, and I'm going to match up my notches at the neck edge. So right where the marking is for our hood, that's where we're stopping for our facing. I've gone ahead and pinned up the zipper along the edge and along the neck edge of the facing. Now let's head over to the machine and stitch everything down. Because my zipper pull is here, I'm going to take my time going by this area here and then move it out the way a little bit. So we're coming up on that corner there. Now we're going to pivot, and we're going to follow along those stitching lines that we've already created to base down our hood. And you want to make sure that your hood is out of the way up under there. So go ahead and trim all of this excess seam allowance, and then we're going to turn everything right side out. All right, so our zipper is complete, and we've attached our facing. If you are doing the hooded version again, you should not have basted down your facing with the rest of your hood. All right, so first I'm going to trim down this seam allowance. So now I'm going to fold under 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I'm kind of eyeballing that there, matching up my center seam on my hood. We're going to slip stitch this entire area here closed. After you do that, go ahead and tack down your shoulder seams on your facing. We slip stitched our hood and our facing to our shoulder seam. So now we're going to move down to our lower band, and what you're going to do is pull your facing out of the way. Just open it up just a little bit, and we're going to match our lower band
at our markings and our notches. So you should have 2 notches and you should have markings at each seam allowance, okay? Go ahead and pin. This is our facing here. We're going to start stitching at that marking there. We're going along our existing stitches. We're stopping right at this dot here, and we're going to stitch through all layers at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance along our existing stitches here. And then we're going to stitch at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance and trim off the excess. If you don't want to trim off the excess and you have a serger, you can go ahead and stitch at the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and then serge. Once you've gone ahead and finished off your lower band, the last thing that we're going to do is go ahead and top stitch your opening front edges right along your zipper line, and we are all done.
All right, y'all, I hope that you enjoyed this sew along. Please check me out on Instagram and also on YouTube at The Corny Rainbow. And until next time, peace.